In the small village of Ashbrook Hollow, life moved slowly. The sun rose over green hills, and people went about their simple routines without much excitement. There was one place in the village that everyone knew but few ever visited closely, the old manor house at the edge of town. Behind its tall iron gates was a garden so beautiful that travelers sometimes stopped just to look at it through the bars. Roses climbed the stone walls. Tall trees gave cool shade. Flowers of every color bloomed in neat rows. The man who took care of this garden was a mystery to everyone. He arrived early each morning, before the sun had fully risen, and he left only when the sky turned orange in the evening. He never spoke. He never smiled. He never looked anyone in the eye. The villagers called him the Silent Gardener, and over time, they stopped wondering about him at all. People are like that. When something stays the same for long enough, they stop noticing it. Mira Hale was different. She was the daughter of the village baker, a cheerful young woman with flour often dusted on her sleeves and a basket always hanging from her arm. Twice a week, she delivered fresh bread to the manor house kitchen, walking the long dirt road past the garden gate. Most people who passed that gate kept their eyes forward, eager to finish their business and return home. Mira always slowed down. She noticed things other people didn't. She noticed that the gardener's hands were rough and sometimes bled from thorns, but he never stopped to care for them. She noticed that on hot days, he worked without resting, without water, without shade. She noticed that nobody, not the manor staff, not the villagers, not even the wealthy family who owned the house, ever offered him a kind word. One afternoon, when the summer heat pressed heavily on the village, Mira stopped at the gate. The gardener was bent over a row of lavender, his shirt soaked with sweat, his face pale from the heat. Without thinking too much about it, she filled a small cup from the well near the gate and walked over. "You should drink something," she said gently, holding out the cup. "It's too hot to work without water." The gardener looked up, surprised. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he took the cup, drank slowly, and gave a small nod. He did not speak, but his eyes told her he was grateful. That was the beginning. From that day on, Mira never passed the gate without bringing him water. Sometimes it was just a cup. Other times, if she had extra bread from her basket, she would leave a small piece beside the cup, wrapped neatly in cloth. She never asked questions. She never demanded that he speak to her. She simply offered kindness and let him decide what to do with it. The villagers noticed her habit and found it strange. "Why do you waste your time on him?" asked old Mrs. Pemberton one morning at the market. "He doesn't even thank you properly. He just stares." Mira only smiled. "Everyone deserves a little kindness," she said. "Even if they never say thank you out loud." Weeks passed. Then months. The gardener began to wait for her by the gate a few minutes before she usually arrived, as if he had learned the rhythm of her visits. He still did not speak, but something in him seemed to soften. Once, Mira noticed that he had planted a small row of sunflowers near the gate, facing the road, facing the direction she always walked from. She never said anything about it, but she noticed. One day, late in the summer, the heat became unbearable. The sun blazed without mercy, and even the birds had gone quiet, hiding in the shade of the trees. Mira set out on her usual delivery, her basket heavier than normal because the baker had asked her to deliver bread to 3 houses that day instead of 1. By the time she reached the manor gate, her legs felt weak, and her vision had started to blur at the edges. She did not notice how pale she had become. She did not notice her own danger. She took one more step toward the gate, and then the world tilted sideways. What happened next surprised everyone, especially Mira herself. A voice, a real voice, deep and full of urgency, called out her name. Mira. It was the Silent Gardener. He moved faster than anyone had ever seen him move, catching her before she hit the ground. He carried her into the shade of the largest tree in the garden, laid her down gently, and pressed a cool, wet cloth to her forehead. He spoke to her the entire time, his voice steady and calm, telling her to breathe slowly, to stay awake, to drink small sips of water. When the manor staff rushed out to see what had happened, they froze in shock. Not because Mira had fainted, but because the Silent Gardener was speaking. Clearly. Confidently. Like a man who had never been silent a day in his life. Mira recovered within the hour, resting in the shade with a cool drink in her hand. As her strength returned, she looked at the gardener with new curiosity. "You spoke," she said softly. "Why have you never spoken before?" The gardener, or rather, the man everyone had believed was a simple gardener, sat down beside her, his expression unusually thoughtful. He took a long breath, as if preparing to release a secret he had carried for a long time. "My name is not Tobias," he said quietly. "That is the name I gave myself when I came here. My real name is Edmund Ashworth. I am the Duke of Pelmore." For a moment, Mira thought she had misheard him, perhaps still weak from the heat. But his eyes were serious, and his voice did not waver. He explained everything. A year earlier, his father, the previous duke, had died suddenly, leaving Edmund with a title he never wanted and a life he had not chosen for himself. From the time he was a small boy, he had been surrounded by people who bowed to his name, smiled at his wealth, and competed for his attention, not because they cared about him, but because of what he could give them. Servants flattered him. Nobles invited him to parties hoping for favors. Even those who claimed to be his friends seemed more interested in his title than in him. After his father's death, the weight of it all became too heavy. Edmund found himself surrounded by people, yet completely alone. He did not know a single person who valued him simply for being himself. So, in a moment of desperation, he made a decision that shocked his entire household. He left his estate, took on a false name, and traveled until he found Ashbrook Hollow, a village far enough from his world that no one would recognize him. He took up gardening because it was simple, honest work that asked nothing from him except effort, and gave back nothing except quiet satisfaction. He chose silence because he feared that if he spoke, his manner of speech, his education, his way of carrying himself, might reveal who he truly was. He wanted, more than anything, to know what it felt like to be treated as an ordinary man. For months, no one looked twice at him. No one cared whether he ate, rested, or suffered in the heat. He had almost convinced himself that kindness without reason simply did not exist in the world, until the day Mira offered him a cup of water and asked for nothing in return. "You never asked who I was," Edmund said, his eyes meeting hers. "You never asked for anything. You simply saw that I was thirsty, and you brought me water. In my entire life, no one had ever done something so simple, so honest, for me." Mira sat in stunned silence, trying to absorb everything she had just learned. The quiet gardener she had brought water to for months, the man she had grown to consider a gentle friend despite his silence, was a duke, a nobleman with land, wealth, and a position far above her own. "Why are you telling me this now?" she finally asked. "Because you saved my life today, in more ways than one," Edmund said. "And because hiding from you any longer would not be fair. You have given me more honesty in your simple kindness than I have received from anyone in my entire life. I could not continue accepting that kindness while hiding the truth from you." News of the Duke's secret spread through Ashbrook Hollow like wildfire. Carriages bearing the Pelmore family crest arrived at the manor within days, sent by worried relatives who had been searching for the missing Duke for months. Servants who once ignored the silent gardener now bowed deeply whenever Edmund passed. The same villagers who had called Mira foolish for wasting her time now looked at her with wide eyes, unsure how to feel about a baker's daughter who had unknowingly captured a duke's trust. But Mira herself did not change. She did not seek attention, and she did not ask Edmund for gifts or favors, even though many in the village expected her to. In the weeks that followed, Edmund prepared to return to his estate and take up his duties as duke. Before he left, he visited the bakery, dressed not in fine clothes but in the simple gardening clothes Mira had always known him in. He asked her to walk with him one last time along the road where they had first met. "I want you to come with me," he said. "Not as a servant, not as a secret, but as someone I deeply respect and admire. You are the only person who has ever shown me kindness without wanting anything for my title or my wealth." Mira considered his words carefully. She was not a woman who acted on impulse, and she was not interested in fairy tales that ignored reality. "If I come with you," she said, "it will not be as someone hidden away or treated as less important because of where I come from. It will be honestly, openly, with respect on both sides." Edmund agreed without hesitation. "That is exactly what I am asking for," he said. "I have had enough of hiding. I want a life built on honesty, starting with you." In time, their story became well known throughout the region, not because of wealth or titles, but because of how it began. People did not remember Edmund and Mira as a duke and a baker's daughter. They remembered them as two people who found honesty in each other during a time when both had nearly given up on finding it anywhere. Mira never forgot the lesson her own kindness had taught her. She often told others, especially young children in the village, that a small act of kindness can mean more than anyone realizes. A simple cup of water, given without expecting anything in return, had changed not only one man's life, but her own as well. And in the gardens of Pelmore Estate, where Edmund eventually brought Mira to live, visitors would always notice one particular detail among the elegant flower beds: a humble row of sunflowers, planted close to the front gate, facing the road, exactly as they had once faced the road in Ashbrook Hollow, a quiet reminder of where their story had truly begun.